when you're going to have a presidential debate and you're in a lockbox room with no audience to feed off of, you have muted microphones, you have all these other constraints. Now
Yeah.
it's just him, mono E woman.
Hey there.
Hey,
How are
welcome
you?
back.
You welcome back.
Ah,
How's it going today?
good day. Today's a good day.
It is a good day. Well, first maybe we'll just recognize or start off with the fact that, today's 9/11. So
Yes.
it's also a bit of a solemn day, right? It's 23 years since the attack on World Trade Center, as well as the rest of the planes going down in Pennsylvania and the Pentagon and all of the rest. Maybe just briefly, do you remember where you were? Where were you on 9/11?
Oh, yeah, I remember exactly where I was.
What were you doing? Where were you?
I was at work, and I was not in my office. I was in someone else's office that worked for
Yeah.
me, and they said, "Hey, they had their computer on, and they had a news feed coming in about the initial attack." And so when I got there and looked at it, the first plane had hit. And we were right in that in-between period where everybody's going, what the heck is this? Was that a plane? What's going on?
Right.
And then we saw live the second plane hit, and we realized this is not
Yeah.
an accident, like
Not a drill. This is
not
not
a drill, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there was a U.S. Army plane that ran into the Empire State Building after World War II. It was kind of like, did somebody make a mistake?
Right.
Nope.
Right. Is this some action movie or
Right.
some historical?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I had the same, and for me, I was 11 years old. It was in my sixth grade science class in Farragut, middle school in Knoxville, Tennessee, in Miss Curry's science class. And every day at this time, we would always watch, just like as a part of the curriculum, as a part of the, morning time, we'd watch Channel One News, which was on, the kind of like basic, super standard news channel that was on these, big TVs that were mounted up in the classrooms. And
Right.
normally, when we would watch Channel One News, you would watch like something about wildfires or there was always some kind of
Sort of
like,
a PBS kind of thing, right?
yeah, some kind of like natural disaster or something. You didn't really know. So when we saw fire and we saw these buildings burning, I think, especially because we were only like 11 or so, nobody knew what was going on. We thought this is another fire or natural disaster or something. But I
Yeah.
remember, just like you, it became very real very quickly, because then
Right. What
everybody
grade was that?
sixth
Sixth.
grade,
Okay.
11. Yeah, it's crazy. And then I remember like the school kind of, everything tensed up at school. Things became really serious. Then we started to realize that there was a terrorist attack on the country. And then, students were getting called over the intercom about, maybe somebody in their family was in New York or some relative. So, yeah, it's a bit hazy, but I remember it being, that is
Really.
one of those, yeah, that is one of those instances where I actually do remember where I was, unlike some of the others
Right.
where we're like, you'll
Right.
always remember. I'm like, yeah, I don't remember where I was for
Yeah.
whatever.
It's pretty rare when there's some kind of external event that just stops everybody's
Yeah.
timeline right then and there everywhere, and you're just staring at it in disbelief, right?
Yeah.
And you know that this is going to have a big impact, right? Which of
Yeah.
course it did, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, still living with probably not me personally, but just society still living with all the impacts. Everything at the airport has all changed. The world was never the same, but
Yep. Certainly
um,
travel wasn't.
travel certainly wasn't. But anyway, so just a quick, observation that we still never forget, which at times you do wonder about
Yep.
parts of society, whether people still
Yep.
remember and whether or not people think it's a conspiracy and blah blah blah. But um, anyway, that's not the reason today's a good day. I think last time we talked, it was been a little while. We were going over, who is Kamala Harris going to pick as her vice presidential, you know, veep stakes. And I won't say who you said because I'll let people go back and explore that video to see who you predicted, whether or not that was true or not. But one way or another, we've ended up with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Tim Walz is the governor of Minnesota, and honestly, if by the looks of it, a fantastic pick. Both in how he comes off, but also in his actual record and what he stands for. But the fun reason today that we're going to talk a little bit about is we just had the first and maybe only presidential debate between he who shall not be named, Donald
Yeah.
Trump, and Kamala Harris
Right.
last night. So
Right.
what are your initial thoughts on that debate? What did you take away as a
Well,
boomer, as
I
a white Southern boomer? Not
yeah.
Southern, but
I'm just another boomer with an opinion, nothing more. But
yeah,
uh, the thing that struck me the most about it
yeah,
wasn't the details of he said and then she said and who won the debate or any of that.
yeah,
But it is so I've been of course, sensitive to this cult of masculinity that's been going on for quite some time.
yeah.
And this cult of masculinity, just like the current conservative
Cult of
politics,
personality.
huh?
Just like the cult of personality going on as well.
Yeah, but it has to do with the masculinity, right?
Yeah,
So, sometime decades back, the evangelicals began to adopt this muscular Jesus, right? This warrior ethos,
right. Jesus
right?
with muscles and an AK,
Yeah,
right?
because
Tan.
because they were formulating a new theology, and that was that Christians ought to get involved in politics, and that this is what God wants them to do. And of course, this is all made up crap. I mean, from a Christian point of view, it's a diversion from
Mm-hmm.
what the point of Christianity is, and so forth and so on. But anyways, off they went, and concomitant with that has been this elevation of male masculinity, right?
Yeah,
So some people say, and I tend to agree with them, that Trump is the latest and greatest expression of what has been going on since Goldwater in 1964, and that
mm.
is the issue of racism. The
Right. Be clear that
United
time.
States
Yeah,
has been a uh, bastion of racism for its entire existence, right?
yeah.
And the Civil War did not put an end to it. In fact, the Civil War really just inflamed it more.
Mm.
But the fact that the Confederate States lost meant that they had to succeed by other means. And the ability to get a president, Andrew Johnson, in the White House and to end federal interference in the South to enforce Reconstruction and the use of these laws gave them the opportunity from a states' rights perspective to
Mm-hmm.
create segregation. And most people don't understand that the Democrats were dominant because the Democrats had the Dixie Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the senators and representatives from the southern states who were Democrats. They were part of the Democratic Party. They were called the Dixie Democrats.
Right, right. Because
Okay?
just because back then the party identities were swapped, right? Because
We're
Lincoln,
swapped. Right.
the Republican Party, the grand old party, GOP was the party of Lincoln, and then the Democrats, the Dixie Democrats,
But
are the descendants of today's Republicans, right?
that's right.
Party.
So I mean, that was a huge fight. And so when LBJ in 64 had the Voting Rights Act and then following it up in 65 with the Civil
Yeah,
Rights Act, these Democrats called the Dixie Democrats went to him and said, if you do this in 1964, they went to him and said, if you do this,
yeah,
you force us, right, to submit to this new regime of right civil rights and the whole 9 yards. Well,
yeah.
it also meant the end of segregation. It also meant the end of everything that they had built. So,
Right.
so they have this second coming of the Civil War, right, with respect to race relations, right? And this was about to be taken apart by LBJ. So these Dixie Democrats said, if you do this, we're leaving the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And the net effect was over a relatively short period of time, they did.
Mm-hmm,
And they
mm-hmm.
became Republicans. So
Right,
this breathes a tremendous new life into the Republican Party,
right,
but not enough. It just wasn't enough. And at
right,
that same point, the Republicans are saying out loud, right, we are in danger, we Republicans are in danger of becoming a permanent minority political party. We will
right,
never get the White House again. And of
right.
course, that's not how it worked out
Yeah,
because Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon and on and on and on. But it caused them to enter into yet another Faustian bargain with the evangelical fundamentalists who were saying, if you do this, we'll vote as a block for you, right?
right,
And
right,
then that was joined by the Catholics, who were actually the only people that gave a hoot about abortion. And
right,
the next thing you know, here we go. Okay,
right,
so now we
right.
fight. The fight goes on and on and on, but the end goal of the very conservative, especially represented by the South, has
Mm-hmm.
still not yet been realized. Okay, from a purely racist point of view, what they want now is to have the Confederacy alive, but embedded in the United States
Right,
by getting a Supreme Court that throws the emphasis towards states' rights and starts to defang the federal government.
right,
And you can have your own little mini confederacy in the South where the states can make their own racial
right,
laws. And
right.
if people think this is, I'm imagining this, I live in the state of Tennessee. It's not imaginary.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So in the end, they're still Americans. They're still in the United States, but they
right,
can control their culture through
yeah,
the law in these states. So
right,
this process, the thing about human behavior is if you're mean and nasty and a bunch of people confront you and you might lose your job or no, you don't have any friends, your
mm-hmm.
choices are A, let to truly repent of it and let it affect you and be better,
Mm-hmm.
or you just go underground another layer.
Right,
You get more subtle. And as
yeah,
time goes on, racism in the United States is just more subtle,
right, right.
right? But
But
in the meantime, during all that time, as well after this, that you started having redlining and other kinds of
mm-hmm.
institutionalization efforts of the inherent racism.
Yeah,
Okay? So
right,
those start to get taken apart. So you have this moment now. It's sort of like generation three of the Civil War,
right,
where, and they feel like that they are so close. to getting it.
Hmm.
Why? Because they got Trump in office and he did their bidding and gave them the Supreme Court they wanted.
Yeah.
They are not done. They want, a theocracy of sorts, whatever they can get.
Right.
So all of this has been in play all along. And one of the components of that is, how do you get the native white male, which is revered by these people? Remember, even in religion, women are subject to their husbands, right? There's all of this misogyny. And when I say racism, I mean it applies to women, blacks, browns, anybody. If you're not white,
Yeah.
you're the other.
Yeah. I
Okay?
mean, practically, if you're not white or if you're not a white male,
White.
you're,
And
you're
then what it really means is white males.
yeah.
Okay?
Right.
So there's this adoption of aggressive male kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right. Right.
Well, Trump, being the chameleon that he is, understood this.
Yeah.
He literally actually practiced, just like Adolf Hitler did, his facial expressions, his grimaces, and his looks, right? To
Hmm.
be able to project this powerful,
Right.
aggressive,
Yeah.
close to
Strong man.
overbearing. All of this is supposed to add up to the idea of strength.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
So I'm watching the debate, and Trump is doing this all through the debate, except he doesn't have as much freedom to do it as he has had in the past.
Hmm.
No one had ever seen somebody like Trump show up when there were 19 Republicans and he just started insulting everybody's wives.
Right.
This just wasn't done, and he just blew out every norm and whatever, and
Yeah.
nobody could react right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
still couldn't react right. Biden had trouble reacting right. Everybody's had trouble reacting right.
Yeah.
But what's also happened is, when you're going to have a presidential debate and you're in a lockbox room with no audience to feed off of, you have muted microphones, you have all these other constraints. Now
Yeah.
it's just him, mono e woman. Okay? And
Right.
so you can see in his body language and his facial expression how he is trying to deliver this hyper masculinity.
Yeah.
Okay? Now,
Yeah.
I thought he did a great job in this way.
Uh-huh.
He spoke without stumbling, without mixing a word, he spoke he was at his very best as a demagogue orator, right?
Sure.
And he was doing great, okay? Except that every single thing that came out of his mouth was bullshit,
Yeah. Right.
okay? Well, every single thing that's ever come out of his mouth is bullshit.
Right.
But he wasn't in a locked room with people that could turn off his mic or fact check him or
Mm-hmm.
the woman thing, everything. I
Mm-hmm.
think the fact that she walked over there and shook his hand unnerved him a little bit,
Yeah.
because he
He didn't.
wanted, if he would have had his way, he'd have walked behind her just like he did with Hillary Clinton. This threatening, aggressive,
Yeah.
strong. And now, when you listen to the bullshit that he throws out, what he's saying, the underlying theme of every single bizarre statement is, look how strong I am. They're weak, I'm strong. If he said weak 100 times, right? I'm strong. They don't have the power. I'll fire them, and they don't, right?
Yeah.
So he has understood and embraced this. Now, personally, as a man, he strikes me as extraordinarily weak.
Oh yeah.
He's the
Totally.
kind of guy that I weeded out of
Yeah.
dozens of organizations over my career, right?
Yeah.
He's instantaneously recognized as a buffoon, a liar, and a weak person,
Yeah.
right? But in politics, it's a show.
Yeah.
People vote, they vote. It's like the Bachelorette or the
Yeah.
Island or whatever.
Popularity contest. It's a
Right. It's
perception.
a popularity contest. I
Yeah.
listened to an interview the other day where they were talking to this like 25-year-old white guy, and he says, well, I'm going to vote for Trump because, he projects so much strength.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
he's that. So he gets it. So it's interesting that when you watch the debate, he is hampered, constrained, but he is trying as hard as he can to produce this
Facade.
aura, this
Yeah.
idea that you should vote for me because I'm not a pussy. I'm strong, right?
Right. Right.
Okay? And he couldn't he couldn't overcome his own particular penchant for extraordinary exaggeration,
Mm.
outright total bullshit, and he
Mm.
just ends up making a fool of himself.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this guy is a two-dimensional cardboard cutout of a human being.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay? And the 80s called and they want all their culture back. Because everything he talks about is from the 80s. It was during the 80s when he was at the apogee of his popularity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
And those were the glory days. And it's been a shit show since then for him. So every reference, every pop reference he makes, every political reference, every instinct, everything is all ground in the 80s.
Mm.
Right? You know, Ronald Reagan projected strength with humor.
Mm.
Okay? That doesn't make Ronald Reagan right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it worked. And this whole new breed of muscular male dominated. So the
Yeah.
demographics, people are very aware, especially on the conservative side of the demographics, that by the 50s or 60s, white people will be in the majority and white men will be in the minority, and also will white men. The
By the
whole
20,
business,
by the
yeah,
2050s. Yeah.
maybe even sooner at the rate we're going, right? They are very aware that their political power is limited,
Yeah. Yeah.
will be limited, constrained.
Yeah.
So the best thing that they could do is get control of government, change the rules.
Right.
So I saw what to me was the last gasp effort of the leader of the cult of male masculinity go down in flames.
I
The
hope
fact
this
that you're
is,
bigger or stronger than a woman is immaterial
yeah.
to your
Yeah.
value.
But it's been interesting to see this outgrowth of masculinity really take place because I've observed it as well. I mean, if you look on in the Fox News bubble and you look on the conservative right, you see people, men acting, the Joe Roganism, the tough guys, RFK Jr., let's eat raw meat and go hunting and kill a wolf with our
Chop the
hands,
head off a whale.
chop
Yeah.
our head off, and then you see all these news commentators, they're all tanned, like, impossibly tanned, or they dip them in orange every morning, looking like Trump. So sweaty, muscular, orange, masculine strength bullshit that you see, which, well, it's also kind of a gross look, to be honest. But
And I tell you, this may be incorrect, but I always get the impression that the women on Fox News are being affected by this. They're mimicking it. They're becoming, they're acting very aggressive. You listen to the women on Fox News.
you're saying the women, like
The women commentators on Fox News are very aggressive. And
oh,
this
totally.
isn't, yeah,
Laura
it's
Ingraham.
not, yeah, it's not like, men saying, when women have an opinion that's terrible, they're just being aggressive. I don't mean that. I mean, they're acting like the men, right? They're adopting the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
uh, attitude. right?
Absolutely. I mean, they are. They view this as an example for after the Democratic National Convention that was over a week or two ago. Tim Walz got on the stage. VP Tim Walz, elect, got on the stage and gave a speech. And his son, who apparently has some kind of like learning disorder or something, I don't know, but his son, who's like 17 or something, stood up and he was crying. He was so full of pride for his dad, and he points to Tim Walz on the stage. That's my dad. That's my dad, and he's tearing up, which is like a really an amazing moment, because you have a really authentic person who's risen to this level and is doing really good things, and then you have just a normal kid who's seeing his dad do this, and then you see, I think it was Ann Coulter or one of the other
All of them, yeah.
soul suckers over
Laura
there,
Ingraham, yeah.
conservative fake news bubble, talking about giving him shit for crying and being weak, and I think she got
Right,
slapped by the internet for doing that, but she went a little too far. But she's doing the same thing. They're all doing the same thing. It's
right,
all weakness. It's all But the whole playbook is so on the nose to what the Nazis did in World War II. I mean, really. I mean, it's not an. I think it's not an overstatement to just call out the parallels that you see of this ecosystem making Americans think that they're victims of outsiders coming to steal their jobs, immigrants coming to eat their cat and their ducks, as Trump said in the debate last night, that there's immigrants in Springfield, Ohio coming, and there's reports of them eating your pets. It's all fear. It's all fear tactics. They have actual no ideas.
right.
But
But the subtext of all of this is the strong versus the weak. We're the
right,
strong.
yeah,
All of the progressives are the weak ones.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I could just have a phone call with Putin and tell him to
You'd be
stop
able to,
it, and he just would go,
absolutely.
"Oh, gee, okay,
Yeah, and
yeah, boss."
he uses Trump in the debate. He uses as a reference of how strong he was as a leader, how world leaders thought about him during his presidency. He
Right,
uses
right,
Viktor Orban, who is the dictator, the autocrat of Hungary, who's driven Hungary into the ground. Who's also Putin's buddy. So, I mean, I I feel too confident now that it's just like the connections between the autocratic world spearheaded by Putin and the role that autocratic world is how it's so connected to Trump and his people, um, is just so obvious now, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's so obvious. Like Trump can't say he wants Ukraine to win. He can't talk bad about. He looks up to Putin. He looks up to Kim Jong Un and Erdogan and all.
right, right.
Oh my gosh! But so now it's emerging very clearly that this is really, as you mentioned, I think in the last one of the last conversations, the battle between democracy and autocracy, which is if Trump wins the White House again, he will align the United States with North Korea and Russia as a collective. He would be effectively I mean, not officially joining it, but in the way that we're aligned right now with the NATO countries that are democratic societies, that would be flipping
Well,
that.
one of the central tenets of conservatism is nativism, isolationism,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Inward looking.
Uh, why? And he is that. And I would say if he became president from a foreign policy perspective, what he would basically do is um, make us recede into isolationism.
Right. He would disengage from America's
Right,
role in the world, right? He would
right,
remove us from,
right,
do what you want.
right,
Just everybody do
right,
what you want. Yeah.
right. And of course, I suppose it goes without saying, but he's very transactional, and he often brings money up about how
Yeah.
much it cost us, or paying us back, or stuff like this.
Right.
This is his.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
It's his
well, this
mind.
is his MO when
Right.
in his businesses. It's all adversarial in his business. It's all aggressive. It's all of take what you want, and if you think I've wronged you, go ahead and try to sue me because I'm going to sue you half to death,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I mean, he's had more lawsuits probably than anyone in the history of mankind,
Easily.
from an
Yeah.
individual point of view.
Yeah.
But I think that there are thinking Republicans that are saying, what the hell is going to happen to us as a party?
Yeah.
Because even though through some quirks in the Constitution, which give the minority an unearned advantage, right?
Yeah. Electoral college.
Well, it's what the Electoral College does. The scheme gave them advantages with respect to the Senate.
Yes.
That's specifically what it did. And
Right.
it did that because the founding fathers would not have ever conceived of us not being an agricultural nation. At the beginning of World War II, right around 74, 75% of all U.S. citizens were involved in agriculture.
Yeah.
Today, it's 19%.
Yeah.
And what happened was all of these people that populated all of these rural states have moved to big cities. So the flight from rural to urban was
Yeah.
not something that the founding fathers would have ever, like, hey, we should make a provision for this. This could happen.
Mm-hmm.
The life was on the farm.
Help me understand what I'm missing with regards to the electoral college and the Senate. And, because everybody's blaming the electoral college, right? Everyone's saying, get rid
Yes,
of it. Tell me,
yes,
do you think we should get rid of it or not? And why?
no,
Why?
no. Here's what I think we ought to do. Well,
Yeah.
because there's nothing fundamentally the matter with it that says, okay, look, we're going to award X number of electors to a state based on basically their population.
And that's already what happens. That's already
And
what's
that's
going
already
on
what
with the
happens
election
today.
of the electors. That's
Right.
already there. So,
Here's the issue with the
yeah.
electoral college in my mind.
Yeah.
It's not the electoral college itself, it's the fact that for most states, 48 of the 50 states, it's a winner take all.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's where the representation falls apart.
Gotcha. Except for like Nebraska, for example, where like one district gets one of the electoral votes and the rest of the state, whoever wins, gets the rest. But
Yes,
so,
right,
okay, continue. Tell me
right.
what
So
you.
if you said the top two vote getters in the state in any form of an election, right, get determine the split between the electoral college. So if it's 60-40 Republicans, they get 60% of the electors or round down to the next smallest number.
Gotcha.
But the business of everybody take all reduces us down to
Gotcha.
6 to 8 battleground states,
Got it.
period.
So it's specifically the winner take all aspect of if a state's population, a popular vote, because the elections are at the state level. So if Tennessee's popular vote goes one vote more to Republican. What does Tennessee? How many electors does Tennessee have? Like 12 or something?
12 or
Yeah, let's just
15 or
call it
something.
12. So even if it's 51-49,
By one vote.
all 12 go towards one side. Whereas you're saying the better proposal is say, well, it's 51-49, you get 7 and they get 5.
Yeah.
Right?
Some
Okay.
mechanism like that, which a couple of states have,
Yeah.
right?
So how did we get here that
That I'm not entirely sure because
yeah,
the Constitution doesn't actually say that. It just says,
the
here's
state
how you
decides
get
how it
electors,
wants
and then the electors go and vote, right? It skips over like, it's a winner take all.
to. Yeah.
Because to them, it's a majority rule democracy, so the winner takes all.
Well, I can see that if a state is predominantly one or the other, if a state is predominantly Democratic, it would not be in their interest to now start saying, hey, let's as a state
Absolutely not.
with our electors because now we're going to lose. So it almost has to be kind of everyone has to do it, I think, to make it work. But I know there's also, what's it called? There's some big project, big initiative out there where Um, Multiple states, many states have joined this pact, and they say if based on the popular vote of our state, we will give all of our electors to the winner of the popular vote. And I think like 10 or 12 states are in it, but it doesn't have enough states to affect how elections are run. What's that called? What's
Well,
the
I'm not familiar with that because that doesn't make any sense to me. We already have a winner take all.
hang on. Electoral
There's
uh
various kinds of ideas about electoral reform. I don't know which one that is.
yeah,
So it's a bit of an issue because let's say you take New York, instead of taking all of it, they might only get 80% of the electoral votes.
yeah,
Right? Same for California. Right? But then you take a state like Texas, instead of all of it going to the Republicans, it's proportional, maybe 70-30 or 60-40. The point is that you get better actual representation, which puts
right,
every state in play. Every state in play.
right,
The
exactly.
biggest complaint about the Electoral College is it's decided by 200,000 people combined
In
in
4 or
6 or 7
5 states.
states.
Yeah, right, right. Well,
Okay?
here it is. Here it is. I found it. So, the agreement I'm referring to, it's a real thing. It's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. So NPVIC. It's a pact among a group of U.S. states and the District of Columbia to allocate all their electoral votes to the presidential candidate who wins the national popular vote, rather than the popular vote within their own state. So they're saying
Yeah, okay.
if Tennessee was a part of this, then they'd say whoever wins the popular vote, Kamala or Trump, you just get us all regardless. So it's practically jumping over the electoral college and saying,
Yeah, it is. It's
well,
going to
yeah,
popular vote. Right?
exactly. So, but there's not
Right.
enough states involved in that yet
Right.
to make it,
Right.
work.
Right.
So,
So the point is that a president is elected by popular vote within the states. It's the
yeah,
winner take all that's the problem for me, right? But that would change politics. It would change politics. All
sure,
right.
it'd make it a real, real
Right.
community sport
Right.
again.
You now have to win the vote from the whole country,
Yeah, right.
right? I don't know what the downstream effects of that would be, but other than that, that's the only thing about the Electoral College that to me seems undemocratic. There, the popular vote in the country back at the time of the Constitution was 13 colonies on the East Coast.
Yeah,
The cities in the North were big.
yeah,
Philadelphia, New York, so for
right,
Boston, okay?
right.
The
Yeah,
South was very sparsely populated,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay?
So they said in
They
order to
made
be
no
a
assumptions
power.
about what would happen when we went to the Pacific Ocean. The
Yep.
southern states said, this is unfair
Yeah,
because if you do it this way, they in the North will run the country and
yes,
we won't even get a say. Take Virginia. And Virginia is a perfect example because Virginia is one of the biggest physically at the time and highly populated, but it was very agricultural. And there
yeah,
were a lot of people in Virginia,
yeah.
right? So when you project it, right, you know there's going to be big and small. There will always be big and small. So you give them some protection.
Okay.
And that seemed to work out okay for most of the time. But
Yeah,
after World War II,
yeah.
the technology
Blew up.
change blew
Yeah.
up.
Okay.
The,
But
the,
it didn't create a new phenomenon. It just exacerbated the phenomenon
yes,
we were
it
concerned
made
about.
that, it put that phenomena on steroids.
Yes. Okay. Okay. But fundamentally, they accounted for that in the design.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Got it.
The unfortunate side effect of this with respect to American politics, the presidential race, and everything else about it is that this bias that has now been exacerbated and is now very pronounced, it's considered to be worth 4 to 4.5 points in the electoral college, right? And the voting mechanisms
Yeah.
is that this technology change occurred dramatically, but it all shows up in the Senate, not the presidency, but the Senate.
Yeah.
The
This is where you
Senate,
observe the extreme
that's right,
differential. Yeah. The
right.
extreme power and
But the
difference.
founding fathers gave the Senate some very powerful tools,
Yeah.
right? The House is just supposed to cough up the money. That's their job, is to fund the government and
Yeah.
manage the money.
Yeah. And
The
oversee.
Senate does all the real work,
Yeah.
okay? Especially judicial appointments.
Yeah. Right.
So when you get a Trump, right, you're going to have this. Now, you can equally say conservatives complain, well, when the progressives were in charge, they got the kind of judges that they wanted. Yes, that's absolutely true.
Sure.
And they say, hey, all's fair in love and politics. We're in charge. We're going to do this. And when you're in charge, you can do this. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Right.
Except for the little problem of lifetime appointments and no accountability.
Yeah.
The little problem of how the Senate does that very important thing is epitomized in Mitch McConnell refusing to bring even to the floor
Yeah. America,
Obama's, right? So it
Obama,
means that
Supreme
this
Court. No.
game can be rigged and
Right.
people will take advantage of the cracks in the Constitution.
Yeah.
They, the founding fathers, with the exception of Alexander Hamilton, who's not a founding father, but Alexander Hamilton, a big mover and shaker, and mostly James Madison, with the exception of those guys and a few others, they had this idea of a man of virtue. They said, well,
Right.
who's going to run? Who's going to run the government? Well, men of virtue like George Washington. Look at him; he's a man of virtue. More guys like him will show up, and we'll have people that are honorable people. And
Yeah.
Madison says, no, you won't. You're going to get Trumps. Okay, so
Mm.
you need to hide the pebbles everywhere. Spread power out as far as you can. And
Yeah.
he tried really hard, which means that the government, by design, is slow,
Yeah.
contentious,
Yeah.
hardly ever unified, and every big change in this country, legally, constitutionally, has occurred when one of the two parties gets completely in power.
Right. Right. You have these
And
very
then
narrow.
all of a sudden there's a massive move forward or a massive move backwards.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right.
It's just the way it works, which is okay.
When did each state decide to give all their electors or not? When was that? I'm going to ask Chat GPT real quick. When did each state decide that they will give 100% of their electors to the winner of the state's popular vote versus proportionally?
Versus the electors having a choice, right?
Having a choice, but also proportionally, like you said, the fundamental issue is that they're not proportionate, that they give them
Okay,
all.
that's the winner take all
Yeah, the
problem.
winner take all. So here we go. In the U.S., most states use a winner take all system, meaning that they give all the their electoral votes, to the candidate who wins the popular vote in that state. This system has been the norm for the majority of states since the 19th century, so the 1800s. Historical context: early electoral system, 1789 to early 1800s. Initially, states had more flexibility in how they chose electors. Some used legislative appointment, while others use popular votes that might be proportional or district based. Moved to winner take all in the 1800s. Over time, by the early 19th century, most states adopted the winner takes all system to maximize their influence on the electoral college. So the goal was to have a unified slate of electors representing the entire state. So the state itself said, hey, we're going to choose all or nothing, because I guess that was deemed the better way. But I don't see that how you could possibly get back to that ideal state that you're proposing, which is a proportional thing, because you need everybody to do it, right? Because
The
every
only way that could, a lot of this stuff, almost everything of really substantial change requires an amendment to the Constitution.
yeah,
And, there is no political possibility of any kind of
yeah, that's not happening.
amendment, period.
Yeah,
None,
yeah,
right? So whether it's a structural deficiency, whether that's really that important,
yeah,
its only real effect is that you end up with a relatively small group of states that are so evenly divided that a very small handful of people actually elect the president,
yeah,
where their vote counts. My
yeah,
vote doesn't count.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I get you.
It's just
Well,
a purist point of view, right? Let me
later on day one.
just go over some of the what I would call the Nate Silver kind of statistics that
Okay.
tell a story about the election. Not what goes on the TV every day, but the basic numbers. So let's just talk about 2016. In 2016, there were 157 and change registered voters. This is when Trump got elected. They didn't all vote. Okay?
What
Only
was
130
what was the registered number of voters?
registered, 157 and
Thousand.
point 0.6.
157,000.
157 million.
Sorry, of course. I was like 157. 157 million. Of course, half the population ish.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the population was about 327.
Okay.
Okay? So that's about half.
Yeah.
Pretty good number. Only 136,000 voted. So 20 million people just didn't vote at all.
Gotcha.
All right. The
Yeah.
Democrats, in the end, by the time every little vote came in, ended up with 65.8. This is Hillary. She gets 65.8. Trump gets 63. So he loses by 2.8 million.
Yeah.
She gets almost 3 million more popular votes and she loses. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there was some significant others like the Jill Steins and a few others that didn't help Hillary at all. And
Right.
there were 7.8 million, almost 8 million of those votes.
Oof.
Spoilers.
Sure.
8 million. That's a big number,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Okay. The percentage that did not vote was 21% of the registered people did not vote.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the majority of the people who don't vote are Democrats.
Hmm.
They are 2-1 worse at voting than their conservative counterparts.
Hmm.
Okay?
Hmm. Yeah.
So now this is where Trump wins. He wins the electoral college, but he's roughly 3 million votes short of the popular vote. So
Mm-hmm.
now he goes for re-election in 2020 against Joe Biden. By this time, the country has grown. Okay?
Yeah.
Not terribly. Maybe 8 million more people in the country over the intervening 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? However, the number of voters registered goes up by 10 million. So it's 168 million registered voters now.
Okay.
Okay? So people register. This is, 4 years of Trump, lots of registration drives, people start signing up.
Yeah.
The total votes were 158.4. So the total number of people that didn't vote were 10 million.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
In
Yeah.
2016, it was 21 million.
Yeah.
So a lot more people voted.
Yeah. Right.
Okay? A lot more people registered and voted because they said, we got trouble.
Yeah.
Okay? The Democrats got over 81 million votes,
Yeah.
81.3.
Mm-hmm.
The Republicans got 74.2.
Okay.
Okay? So they got not 3, but 7 million more votes than Trump. So they slaughtered him on the popular vote and
Yeah.
won on the 7 states. Okay,
Yep. Right.
10 million people didn't vote. The spoiler portion, the Jill Steins, the whoever's, the JFK Juniors, was
Mhm.
only 2.9 million. So
Okay.
the spoiler effect shrank from 8 to 3.
Right.
Okay, the population was a little bit bigger. All
Yeah.
right. Now, when you think about these numbers in 2020, Biden versus Trump, the Democrats, there's none of these 81.3 million Democrats today who are not going to vote. A. B, who are going to vote for Trump or someone else. Today, without anything else happening,
Same
Kamala
exact.
Harris has got 81.3 million votes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody is going to go, what was I thinking? Biden was
Trump
terrible. I'm
is-
going to Trump.
Right. Right.
Okay?
Right. So you assume safely that all of the same Biden voters came
Yes.
plus
Yes.
more because then you have the
Yes.
population increase as well, higher turnout, higher registration.
Well, the population has now gone up by another 10 million people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's 10 million more people in play, but they're not all registered voters. 50% of them will be registered voters. So that's 5 million people suddenly entering the mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay? Now, Trump got 74 million. There is a question whether he'll struggle to get the whole 74 million.
Right. Right. Or at
He's
least.
not going to get more than 74 million in my prediction. He'll
Yeah.
have a little bit less because there's disaffection among the Republican ranks.
Yeah. Right.
The vote for other may go up,
Yeah.
right? I would
Yeah.
say probably go to 5 million or something like that.
Right.
Okay. But there's 5 million more votes because of population growth, and there's still the 10 million who did not vote in 2020. That's a 15 million person pot.
Mm-hmm.
Those 15 million people and where they are physically,
Yeah.
how many of those 15 million people are in these evenly split battle states?
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the whole electoral college thing. She's going to kill him
In the
in
popular.
the
No
popular
doubt
vote,
about that. Yeah. Right.
right? But it's that proportion. However, take Georgia. The Democrats may lose Georgia, but Georgia is turning purple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's managed to piss the women and the blacks off, something unbelievable. And, there's a possibility that the Democrats could win Georgia by 30,000 votes.
Yeah.
Minuscule. But even if they lose it, they have a really good position coming about in the blue wall states. And
Yeah.
they would probably take one or two, Arizona and or Nevada,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
maybe
I
North
think that she
Carolina.
would get there. So the problem is, okay, she becomes president. She's got a hostile Supreme Court. She might have the House,
Mm-hmm.
maybe by a whisker.
Yeah.
But the Senate is once again the problem
Yeah. Ugh. Trash.
because the Senate is extraordinarily powerful,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
that comes down to like John Tester in Montana,
Yeah. Yeah. I
right?
know. And Sherrod
Okay,
Brown in Ohio, right? Those
that's
are
right.
those
But
main two. Yeah.
what the polls don't tell you, what they can't seem to be able to, because polls inherently are,
Yeah. Just snapshots of.
yeah, they're just, there's not much information in them.
Yeah.
Is that as the next 50 days go by and Trump gets more violent, more aggressive, more toxic masculine, more everything, that this could literally affect
The Senate.
women more in places like Montana. There could be a big surprise coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the surprise would be that the Democrats hold the Senate
Yeah.
and they get the House by a tiny, tiny bit.
Yeah.
These are not big enough majorities to do any big thing,
Yeah.
but they can most certainly throw a lot of cold water on the whole Christian nationalism slash Civil War slash the whole uprising here of being able to
Yeah.
go to state rights.
Yeah.
But somewhere along the line, there's still not enough votes to do something about the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Right.
So
Uh,
public pressure and reputation will have to be the issue.
yeah.
The only way you're going to have an effect on the Supreme Court is people screaming at the
Yeah.
top of their lungs at them all day long.
Yeah. We got to wrap it up, but just one thing to say
I'm
is
done.
what's always a little bit disappointing is that, Americans aren't involved enough or understanding enough the system of what's actually happening, that in the event, for example, that, Kamala becomes the president, maybe the House either stays Republican or becomes Democratic, and then say the Senate, goes back to being Republican. If not much happens, or if they think, I'm having these big expectations now because Kamala is our president, and she can't deliver on that, like Obama couldn't deliver on that in many different ways, and because you don't have enough power across the branches of government, not just the presidency, that people then say, well, you know what? You told me this is important. I voted for you, and you didn't do it. And then people blame the wrong person, the wrong party, the wrong group for what didn't happen. And then they say, you know what? I'll vote for the Republicans this time. And then you're back to, it's like, and
Right. But
I
you
like,
don't,
yeah,
but that may well be the case.
yeah,
I mean, you know, Madison did a pretty good job of putting the power in many buckets.
everywhere. Yeah,
And that's a blessing and that's a curse,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
However, don't underestimate the significance of Trump exiting the scene. You can't find anybody I've thought about this trying to remember any demagogue personality who's more perfectly fitted to their ambitions and who is that all their hopes and dreams are wrapped up in Trump,
yeah.
right? Being president. And if he exits the scene and fades into obscurity,
Maybe
they
they're out.
don't have anything.
Yeah, screw this. I'm no more. I'm not participating anymore.
There's
My
no,
it's not
you
healing.
know, that's why, you want to put down the mob, shoot the leader, you know? I mean,
I always say, yeah,
yeah, so, like the Germans say, the fish always stinks from the head first,
right,
right?
right,
So I think that it's not insignificant that her winning and Trump going home, them losing their uber representative, their mega mouth, their
Mhm.
willing to do whatever they want, all of this kowtowing and everything,
Yeah,
right? You will see some Republicans willing to cross the aisle and vote with Democrats on the merits of a bill instead of ideological party purity or the threat of Trump telling his voters, throw this guy out.
right, 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 right.
A slight moderation in the craziness can
Yeah,
go a long ways.
sure, and I'll take that. I don't need to have the House and the Senate and the White House all together. I think, especially with the war in Ukraine and wars in the Middle East and everything, I would be happy with just having the executive be not Donald Trump and not a Republican, and somebody that stands for freedom and democracy, and that's Kamala Harris, and work out the rest over time. So just take what you
Right,
can for now,
right,
survive the day, and
right. But I think it would mean the death of the greater movement
right, right. The MAGA movement
because
itself.
this movement has a disproportionate number of old white men in it.
Yeah, true. Ooh,
And
deep has even more. Of
death will clean
boomers.
it up.
Of boomers.
Yes,
Not your
yes,
persuasion of boomer
yes.
in terms of
All my compatriots.
right, right, right.
And
Wow.
we're all on, past the autumn of our lives. Death will clean this up.
Well, on that optimistic note, let's hope voting will clean it up
I
as
just wish
well.
I'd be here to see it. That's all.
Well, Jesus, Dad. I mean, hang on at least till November 6th.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Come on, give me a good solid, decade more, please. But well, we've run over.
Whoops.
Our thousands and millions of viewers are well, they love a little overtime, so that's fine. But well, let's check in again soon. This whole series, OK Boomer, is not meant to be predominantly political or just about politics, but because of the year that we're in, that's kind of my.
Because of the day after we're in.
But yeah, because where we're at right now, to talk about other trends and other things. First we're just talking about
With
the
that.
immediate thing before us right now.
And I know nothing about 2025, and I haven't read it, never
Yeah,
talked to
Project
anybody about
2025.
it,
What's
don't
that
know any.
thing?
What is that?
Yeah. Let's talk
I've
about
heard
that
it.
next time. Let's talk about Project 2025 next time. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper
Yeah.
dive
Deeper dive into that. Yep.
if I can
Yep.
use those awful
Yep.
words. All right, Dad. It's been fun. Okay,
All
Boomer.
right. Okay.
Over and out.
Ciao for now.